So our approach is based on two big data sets. The first is that how do we prepare young people to deal with the seismic shifts we're seeing that technology is causing in the labour market. So almost how do we prepare them for a future of what's looking like almost certain uncertainty in terms of how much is changing and how fast. And the second piece of evidence is how do we leverage the data that we know of the power of giving them positive ideas about their future at the right age. So we know that if they have these positive seeds of ideas and can see themselves in a positive future, it has huge impacts on their short-term and long-term outcomes, and I'll take you through some of that. So the upshot of all that is that career development as a one-stop intervention late in high school for that single decision that will set you off on this linear path for life is just not enough. Because the reality isn't this linear path. The reality is all over the place. There's twists and turns and unexpected things. Not just you're changing, the world around you is changing. We kind of prepare people for that, and they live that. And in fact, we know that just 18 months after making that single decision about what they will do, what am I going to be for my life, 71% of them get knocked off track, either by them changing their mind or by something else happening. And now that's huge, because without the skills to navigate out of that, because we were focusing on a decision, not on the skills to become unstuck, they do get stuck, and it's terrible for the person, and it's terrible for the economy. So this is why there's much more pressure on things now, and the governments and policies are starting to shift, because what they're seeing is that transition is 4.7 years on average at the moment to transition from full-time education to full-time work at the level that you're expecting. That's costing us 11.3 billion in lost GDP just for the underemployment difference between adults and young people. So that's where the power has come from for the change, and for the fact that they're saying, oh, okay, well, what should we do? Well, we should teach them the skills to do it, not just focus on one decision. So the mismatch between what we prepare people for and the reality they face is about to get even harder to ignore. If this is a very non-technical graph, which is always picked up by students, you've got no labels on your axes. I'm like, wow, it's a stick man. But this is us humans over time. And yes, there's been change and progress over time. But we're standing before an enormous acceleration in labour market disruption driven by tech and automation. My favourite example of this is the WhatsApp guys. So the change in what we can drive in terms of productivity through technology and what it does for the labour market is huge here. So they started in 2009. By 2014, there were 34 billion text messages being sent and received via WhatsApp. Now, that was almost eclipsing all of the telco providers globally at that point. And they were bought for 19 billion by Facebook. And at the time they were bought, they had 55 employees. Now, Telstra last year alone had 36,000 just here. So that, in terms of wealth creation with very few people, for me, that blows me away. That's how much it is. And those 55 employees included the receptionist that started out with them, the cleaner. They all had equity, and that was it. It's so lean and what we can deliver with tech. So it is changing. There's three major shifts. So that productivity gap is one, and that's driven by being able to automate a lot of things. There's also globalization, and we often talk about this as, everyone's coming to take the jobs, but actually there's a real positive side to that too. And we talk about casualization or the gig economy, and the fact that companies are less invested in providing a stable, secure career for people over the long term, and more invested in a casual workforce, which pushes the responsibility back to people to manage their own careers and have extra jobs. I promise there's good news coming soon. So the headlines that everyone would have seen, and the students today, absolutely, I said, what will the world be like in 10 years? What will the world of work be like? Robots are going to take all the jobs. We won't be able to get a job. The jobs we have will be rubbish. We won't be able to afford a house. The population's growing. The jobs are shrinking. You could almost hear the headlines. I almost recognize some of the headlines coming out. So 47% of current jobs won't exist in 10 years. Now, that was 2013, so that's really soon. We know that that's not a real fact now. We know that 47% of the tasks that are done in jobs have the potential to be automated. It's not like they'll take a surgeon's job, gone, another job, but the tasks within it have the potential to be automated. And that 65% of today's kindergarten kids will do jobs that don't exist yet. You know, these are predictions. Nobody has the crystal ball. And that today's next generation are likely to have 17 jobs across 5 different careers. So that chopping and changing and shifting as industries shift. Now everyone is really depressed. There's really good news. But what the research says is if this line is school years, we know that in primary school, the aspirations about the future start to narrow based on gender stereotypes, social stereotypes. People like me do jobs like this. I should be this. Someone told me I should be this. And almost putting themselves in a little box before they've even become aware of the world around them and what is possible. We also know that hope about the future and academic engagement as a result of that starts to decline post-year 5. But, and here's the good news, I promised it was coming. If we can get in there at this critical upper primary time, then we know that if we can give them a positive future horizon, so teach them the skills to actually imagine this positive future for themselves and the confidence to know that they'll be able to navigate towards it, we see huge short-term academic engagement improvements by having, actually, this is relevant to me. I've put my own why back into what I'm learning. Short-term social engagements, so much more community and social engagement, and as well as long-term academic and job outcomes. And obviously, all of that contributes to huge well-being and then macroeconomic outcomes. But this is it. We have to get in at that point. And congratulations, all your children are. So primary school is critical in other ways as well because they're really developing that sense of self, including their perception of whether they're a winner. Smashing open the stereotypes and exploring broad possibilities, and I'll show you in a minute, they nailed it today. They were very good at this. And stoking that natural and innate curiosity about the world around them. Because, you know, as adults, we kind of go like, yeah, okay, but we want to keep and nurture that childhood kind of curiosity. So this is kind of a very simple map of how career development works. You kind of be high exploration around the world of work and really open to everything, or low exploration, no idea at all, to totally decided. And what we're not trying to do is get everybody to that end because we know that's going to be not prepared for tomorrow. Instead, what we're trying to do is give them the skills to keep navigating, so to keep exploring. So be curious, be able to recognize a moment of inspiration when it strikes, be able to take action on that, find out a bit more about it, whether it's talking to someone about it, and we've got lots of experiments that we'll be asking you to follow up with. Talking to someone about it might be doing work experience when they're older, it might be having a job for a while when we're adults, but this is a lifelong learning process. Learn from it and iterate on your ideas. So constantly going around this loop. So absolutely we started today. The people that had no idea, we told them right up front, we're not trying to get you to that end. We're just trying to get you on this cycle.